Daniel, thank you. Meanwhile, Texas Democrats are still staying out of state, continuing to block a vote on Republicans' controversial redistricting plan. The plan that would give Republicans 5 more U.S. House seats was all but ordered by President Donald Trump. In response to that plan, a handful of Democrat-run states are looking at similar moves, potentially redrawing their maps to give seats to Democrats. It's a situation we haven't seen before. Politicians talking about doing off-cycle redistricting explicitly for political purposes. Joining us now for more are two friends of the program and political professors who do extensive work when it comes to redistricting, Dr. Michael Bitzer of Catawba College and Dr. Chris Cooper of Western Carolina University. Guys, it's great to see you. Thank you so much. I mean, this is fast moving. I mean, we saw the governor California sent a letter to the president basically saying, I got to do it if you're going to do it. The Texas Republican governor said, if we're going to take more seats even potentially. I mean, Dr. Bitzer, we've seen this be very political. This seems to, is it an arms race?
It is very much an arms race, and we're broaching into the area of what we would call in the 1980s MAD, mutually assured destruction of the other political party. We're talking about war games, potential of completely excising potentially one party out of various states. And I think that, as a former mentor of mine at the University of Georgia wrote a book on redistricting, and his subtitle, The Most Political Activity in American Politics, this is partisanship and politics on steroids.
Yeah, and so, Chris, I mean, I remember I was here in 2002 when there were lawsuits over North Carolina's maps that Democrats drew, by the way.
Right.
But I don't remember being sort of part of the mainstream conversation like it has now. Is part of that how the software has developed, has become so much easier? Is it just we've become that much more I'm kind of surprised it hasn't come up more in the past. We've always been partisan in a lot of ways, right?
We have, but I think it has reached epic proportions the last few years. So I think you have kind of the perfect storm of problems, right? So you have this massive hyperpolarization, right, where each party really doesn't agree about anything with the other party, right? What kind of car they drive, what kind of beer they drink, where they want to go to dinner, and of course, ideology and politics, right? So you have that piece. You have, I think, as you said, the technology that makes it easier. You can sit in your pajamas in your mom's basement. You can draw maps all day long. But I think the other thing that's happened is that our voting patterns are increasingly predictable, right? It used to be we had more split ticket voting, with the exception of our gubernatorial race. Like, good luck finding actual split ticket voters left in America. So if you have the technology, plus you can say, hey, I know this neighborhood will reliably go a certain way. That just wasn't true that many years ago. So it's easier to pull off technologically, but also just kind of what we have done to ourselves.
And Chris, we should put this out there because a lot of people are like, oh, I wonder if Democrats will try something here. It's at this point, it's not really possible politically for them.
Yeah, it would be extremely difficult for Democrats. I mean, look, Democrats can't try it here. Let's just be real clear, right? So the only people in North Carolina that can draw maps besides the courts every now and again is the General Assembly, the legislature. Our governor is one of the very few in the country that does not have veto power that actually applies to redistricting. Of course, the person who drew up that veto rule years ago was a guy named Roy Cooper when he was a state senator from Nash County. Probably kind of wishes right now he could put in a little veto power for the governor.
Yeah, and actually, I've talked to him about independent redistricting, not doing it, and he said it was a regret essentially, which you don't hear from politicians a lot. That was a couple years ago. I'm waiting still for him to come in studio as a U.S. Senate candidate. Hint there to Roy Cooper. But Dr. Bitzer, I wonder about people at home because so many people don't really understand it. This is kind of wonky, as important as it is. But let's say even Texas, there's 70% Republicans and 30% Democrats. There are millions and millions and millions of people that live in Texas. That's a lot of people that don't really have much of a say in anything then, right?
Right. And basically what redistricting can do is excise or carve out a particular political party if the lines are drawn in such an effective way. And as Chris noted, very, very well, I mean, the idea that we have become such party loyalists in our voting patterns means that generally we can look at precincts and say, you know what, this pattern has held over several election cycles. It's probably going to hold into the future. So let's draw this particular precinct, the building blocks of these districts, into one particular district or the other, stack them all together, and basically you have the ability to predetermine what an election will do before anybody has already cast a ballot.
So, Dr. Bitzer, do we see a new round of lawsuits over all of this again? You know, in a state like North Carolina, we talked about it probably wouldn't matter because the courts are all in Republican control right now, too. But is this a new era of new redistricting lawsuits potentially?
It's going to be hard because thanks to North Carolina and the Rucho case, basically the federal courts have said this is a political question and we're going to leave it to the political branches and to the states to deal. Now, some states like California have enacted independent redistricting commissions. Democrats, and particularly the governor out there, Governor Newsom, have said, you know what, we're not going to fight with one hand tied behind our backs. We're going to try and at least get this law exempted for the 2026 midterm and see what we can do if Texas pursues, their own redistricting strategy. So, this is politics in its most raw and basic form, but this is something that, we, the citizens, are eventually going to have to say, enough is enough, but I'm not real sure when that time is going to come, if it ever.
Well, perfect segue to my question on that, Dr. Cooper. Do we just sit back and wait for a generation that gets sick and tired of it and goes back more towards, not this being politics being their identity?
I think it's going to take something more than that. It's going to take something affirmative sooner. And the problem is they have to stick with that. I mean, the California model that Michael talked about was heralded as being this great step forward at this independent redistricting commission. And most of the evidence suggests they actually did a pretty good job, right? These were not highly partisan maps. What do the Democrats want to do the second the shoe ends up on the other foot? They want to redraw those. You have members of this commission who took months out of their lives to fight for independent redistricting. And they're saying, well, I think in this case, given what the Republicans are doing in Texas, maybe we'll go ahead and throw the baby out with the bathwater here. So I'm worried. And I would add on to what Michael said about the courts and partisan redistricting and what we're likely to see there. I think the real action legally is going to end up being on racial gerrymandering. There's all sorts of different varieties of ways that works, but South Carolina is talking about maybe redrawing their maps to try to squeeze an extra Republican seat out there. I would expect a challenge on that, not based on partisanship, but based on race.
Well, and Dr. Bitzer, we should end this with one of the more important points I didn't bring out at the top. This is not about a seat or two in Texas only. This is about overall control of Congress, right?
Exactly. I mean, we've got such a narrow margin in the House. Republicans are already starting to feel the heat of a traditional midterm environment that's going to potentially turn against them. The president is reading the tea leaves. He gave the marching orders. If you can pick up 5 seats, Republican seats in Texas, that might blunt some of a potential Democratic movement in next year's midterms. But if you have 5 Democratic seats coming out of California and maybe some combination out of Missouri for Republicans or New York for Democrats, it's going to be a mess, and it's probably going to end up in a status quo kind of environment, very tight margins, whoever controls the House next year.
Boy, call me naive, but I remember the days when they tried to mask the reasoning behind it. Now the blatantness and the brashness of the reasoning is wild.
The Texas redistricting chair said it as much. We are doing this to get more Republican seats, period.
Maybe admire the honesty. I don't know. Fascinating times. Yep. Guys, thank you for being here to help us break it down and make sense of it, as always. Time for our first break.